On the edge of a great desert plateau above the Nile, a mountain of pale stone climbs toward the sky in 6 enormous tiers, older than almost anything human hands have raised. It was built more than 46 centuries ago, the first great building on Earth made entirely of dressed stone and the very first pyramid. Before this, no one had ever piled cut stone so high. Here, at the dawn of the Pyramid Age, stands the ancestor of them all. Welcome to the Step Pyramid of Djoser. We are at Saqqara, a vast desert necropolis on the west bank of the Nile, southwest of modern Cairo. This sprawling burial ground served Memphis, the first capital of a united Egypt, whose kings and nobles laid their dead to rest out here on the high, dry sands. For thousands of years, Saqqara has been a city of the dead, and rising above it all is the great stepped monument of King Djoser. Before us spreads Saqqara itself, a sea of sand studded with tombs, shafts, and ruined temples stretching for miles along the desert edge. This was the great cemetery of ancient Egypt, chosen because it lay on the dry west bank, the land of the setting sun and the realm of the dead. Generation after generation buried their kings and nobles here, and at the heart of it, all one monument towers above the rest. Down on the green floodplain below once stood Memphis, the first capital of a newly unified Egypt, where the crowns of the north and south were joined into a single kingdom. From this city, the early pharaohs ruled a young and ambitious land. Little of it remains today but scattered stone and palm groves, yet in its prime it was one of the greatest cities of the ancient world, and Saqqara was its eternal shadow on the ridge above. This monument was raised for one man, Pharaoh Djoser of the 3rd dynasty, who reigned in the age we call the Old Kingdom, around 2670 years before our era. He was a king of rising power and ambition, and for his tomb he wanted something no ruler had ever possessed. What his builders created for him would change the course of architecture forever and set the pattern for the pyramids to come. To grasp the wonder here, we must picture what came before. The kings of earlier days were buried beneath low, flat rectangles of mud brick, a form we call the Mastaba, a simple bench of earth over a hidden chamber. For centuries, this was the shape of a royal tomb, modest and earthbound. Djoser's monument began this way too, as a single broad Mastaba, and then it became something the world had never seen. Here rises the great leap. Instead of perishable mud brick, Djoser's builders cut and shaped hard limestone into countless blocks, laying them course upon course into a monument meant to last forever. It is widely honored as the first monumental building in the world made entirely of dressed stone. In this quiet desert, humankind first learned to build for eternity, trading the mud of the river for the stone of the hills. The mind behind this marvel was Imhotep, Djoser's brilliant official and chief builder. It was he who imagined stacking one mastaba upon another, each smaller than the last, until a flat tomb became a soaring stair of stone. He was architect, priest, and sage, and his vision here was so far ahead of its time that his name would be remembered for thousands of years, long after most kings were forgotten. And so the tomb grew upward into 6 great steps of stone, climbing more than 60 meters toward the heavens. To the ancient Egyptians, these tiers were no mere decoration. They were a stairway, a mighty staircase by which the soul of the king might ascend to join the sun and the eternal stars. What began as a flat mastaba had become a stairway to the sky, the earthly tomb transformed into a path to the divine. The pyramid does not stand alone. It rises at the center of a vast walled complex, a rectangular enclosure ringed by a towering wall of white limestone longer than a mile around. Within lie courts, shrines, and chapels, some of them solid dummies built only to serve the king in the afterlife. It was a whole city of stone for the dead, the first of its kind, an entire sacred precinct raised around a single royal tomb. We pass through the grand entrance colonnade, a long corridor lined with tall stone columns carved to imitate bundles of reeds tied together. In these graceful pillars, the builders turned the humble marsh plants of the Nile into everlasting stone, remembering in limestone the older shrines once woven from living reeds. It is among the earliest stone columns on earth, a hall where the plants of the river were made immortal. Beyond the colonnade opens the Heb-sed Court, built for the great Jubilee festival of kingship. In life, a pharaoh renewed his rule in this ancient rite, and here it was recreated in stone so that Djoser might celebrate it forever in the world beyond. Rows of dummy chapels line the court, eternal stage sets for a ceremony without end, ensuring that the king would reign and be renewed for all time in the afterlife. So enduring was the memory of Imhotep that later generations did something almost unheard of. They lifted this commoner, a man of no royal blood, into the ranks of the gods. 2,000 years after his death, he was worshipped across Egypt as a god of wisdom and of healing, and pilgrims sought his blessing at shrines of their own. Of all the countless officials of ancient Egypt, only a rare few were ever raised to godhood, and here at Saqqara his masterpiece still stands. Everything that followed began here. This stepped monument predates the famous Great Pyramid of Giza by roughly 80 years, a single lifetime and a little more. From these 6 blunt tiers, Egypt's builders learned their craft, refined their tools, and reached ever higher, until they raised the smooth-sided giants that still crown the desert downstream. The Step Pyramid was the first note in a song that would echo across 1,000 years of stone. And still it stands. For some 46 centuries, this weathered mountain of stone has watched over Saqqara, outlasting empires, invasions, and the slow erasing of the sand. Time has softened its edges and bared its ancient core, yet it endures, the eldest of all the pyramids, the stone ancestor from which every pyramid descends. To stand before it is to stand at the very beginning of monumental architecture itself. The first pyramid, the first great house of dressed stone, a stairway raised to the sky for a king, and the work of a man remembered as a god. From this single monument in the sands of Saqqara descend all the pyramids of Egypt. Thank you for watching. Follow for more interesting people, places, and things we cover on the channel.